Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're deconstructing what looks like a really simple story, The Frightened Lion, to see exactly how children process hidden fears. On the surface, it's just a cute little bedtime tale. But if you actually peel back the layers, wow, it gives us this incredible psychological blueprint for how the unknown collides with an active imagination, especially in the mind of a child. Think about it. What actually happens when a child's mind is left completely alone in the dark with a noise they just don't understand? Tap, tap, tappity-tap. On its own, it's a totally neutral sound, right? But context is literally everything. When you hear that sound in the dead of night, with absolutely no visual explanation, it completely stops being just a noise. It turns into this blank canvas for the mind to just project all its deepest anxieties onto.
Section 1. The illusion of comfort, establishing the baseline of safety.
You see, before a fear can really take hold and escalate, there usually needs to be a disrupted baseline of safety. Our lion here does exactly what a child does to feel secure. He reads his favorite bedtime story, sings his favorite song, and flips on his trusty nightlight. He is 100% in his safe zone. And setting up this baseline is absolutely crucial because it makes the disruption that's about to happen feel so much more intense. It really highlights that stark contrast between the cozy internal safety of the bedroom and the vast unknown world outside.
Which brings us to Section 2, the unknown trigger, when safety is breached.
The very second the unknown intrudes, the fear kicks off with this sudden, sharp shift in focus. The lion whispers, "What's that sound? That sound, it's coming from outside the window." The danger isn't inside the room with him. It's external, it's totally undefined, and it's separated by just a thin pane of glass. For a kid, a window at night is basically the ultimate boundary between safety and the great unknown. And the lion just zeroes right in on that boundary, letting his mind completely wander into what could possibly be lurking out there in the dark.
Section 3. Escalating the hidden fear. The monster grows in the mind.
This is where we see how a child's unchecked imagination basically acts as an echo chamber, rapidly compounding their anxiety. We can actually track this auditory escalation as a direct metaphor for his internal panic. It starts out simple and slow. Tap, tap. But as his anxiety grows, the sound in the story actually starts to mirror his racing heart. It ramps up to point 2. Tap, tap, tappity-tap, tap. And then boom, it hits a fever pitch at point 3. You can just look at the frantic pacing of that tappity-tappity to see a mind that is completely spiraling out of control. It's not a noise anymore. To him, it's approaching doom.
And remember, he has zero visual proof of this, but his imagination has totally filled in the blanks, mutating a little tapping sound into the ultimate threat. He doesn't stop to wonder, hey, is that a bird? Maybe the wind blowing a branch? Nope. He leaps straight to the absolute worst-case scenario, the biggest, scariest monster ever. And honestly, this is exactly how children view hidden fears. A lack of information doesn't lead to logical deduction for them, it leads to catastrophic imagination. Basically, the less they know, the bigger the monster gets.
Moving on to Section 4, Absurd Coping Mechanisms, Physical Reactions to Mental Threats.
So as this imagined threat just keeps growing, the lion resorts to physical coping mechanisms that really highlight the pure absurdity of his unchecked fear. It's incredibly telling and, okay, a little bit funny, that this big, majestic, powerful lion grabs a baseball bat, throws a bicycle helmet on his head, literally squeals, "Eek!" runs away, hides under the bed, and pulls a blanket over his head. It's a completely irrational response to an unknown sound. But to a child, or in this case a terrified lion, these physical barriers, no matter how ridiculous they are, offer this desperate sense of control against a threat that they built entirely in their own head.
Section 5. Confronting the reality. Bringing the unknown into the light.
Now, the really crucial point is what happens when this fear is finally dragged out of the shadows. Just look at this contrast. You have the monstrous expectation, the biggest, scariest monster ever, versus the actual reality, which is just a little frog wearing a tutu and tap shoes, dancing on the windowsill. Seeing that contrast just instantly deflates all the tension. It proves that the reality of our fears, once we actually force ourselves to look at them, is usually wildly different and way less threatening than whatever we cooked up in the dark.
Confronting the truth instantly reveals the absurdity of the panic. The story explicitly points out that the lion, who is still wrapped in a blanket, wearing a bicycle helmet, and clutching a bat, looks ridiculous. But more importantly, he feels ridiculous too. And bringing hidden fears into the light often diffuses them with this exact kind of humorous realization. The moment a child actually sees what was making that scary noise, the spell of the fear is completely broken by the sheer silliness of the truth.
And I just love the frog's casual reaction to this fully armored, terrified lion. It perfectly captures the utter disconnect between his internal anxiety and external reality. The frog isn't a monster, she just wants to show off her new tap dancing routine. She takes one look at this heavily armed lion hiding under a bed and casually goes, you look busy. I will come back later. See ya." The threat literally never even existed.
Which brings us to our final section. Part 6, The Imagination Trap, the moral of the frightened lion.
Let's wrap up by really zeroing in on the core takeaway from this text and why it matters so much for understanding how children process the world around them. We can call this concept imagination magnification. The story lays it out plain and simple. Sometimes our imaginations make things scarier than they really are. This is exactly why a shadow in the corner becomes a ghost, or a tap-dancing frog becomes a giant window-smashing monster. When there's a void of the unknown, the mind is always going to fill it with fear.
So, as we close out this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. As you go about your day, or maybe next time you sit down to comfort a child who's scared of the dark, ask yourself, how often do we let the unknown dictate our fears? What neutral, harmless tappity-tappy in your own life is your imagination currently turning into a monster?